Number 10. A devastating relationship. During the early hours of the day, on July 22, 2018, the lifeless and battered body of a Brazilian woman was found by the authorities in her Guarapuava apartment. Police released footage capturing the final moments of 29-year-old Tatiane Spitzner's desperate struggle for her life inside an elevator. The victim was subjected to a brutal attack by her husband, 32-year-old Luis Felipe Manvaila, who strangled her and callously threw her down from their fourth-floor apartment. At first, the police suspected that the university biology lecturer had killed his wife of 5 years after subjecting her to a vicious assault. But Luis maintained that they had not argued and that Tatiane died by throwing herself off the balcony of their flat. His lies were soon exposed because, according to forensic reports, Tatiane did not die from a fall, but instead died from being strangled while inside the couple's apartment. The report highlighted several crucial pieces of evidence, including hand imprints on Tatiane's throat and a fractured hyoid bone, typically linked with strangulation. What's more, the lawyer's body showed multiple fractures consistent with a fall from a height of 40 feet onto the concrete ground. The report revealed no signs of chemical reactions, such as traces of adrenaline or cortisol, indicating fear or awareness of the impending fall. Researchers concluded that Tatiane was already dead before hitting the ground. Tests also indicated high levels of alcohol in her bloodstream, suggesting her vulnerability during the event. CCTV footage captured in an underground parking garage and the elevator revealed Tatiane's desperate attempts to escape her aggressor. Approximately 20 minutes after entering their flat, the suspect is seen bringing Tatiane's lifeless body back up the elevator, while also cleaning bloodstains off the elevator walls. Luis admitted to bringing her body up to the apartment, as captured by security footage, before fleeing the scene in a car. He was later arrested on suspicion of murder around 185 miles away from the city after crashing on a motorway. Luis claimed he fled because he was deeply disturbed by the images of his wife jumping. The investigation into Tatiane's death took longer than expected due to the complexities of the case. Forensic experts conducted 3 simulations to analyze the dynamics of her fall from the couple's 4th-floor flat, using a doll with a similar weight and height as Tatiane. These simulations were trying to explore various possibilities and angles of the fall. Close friends of Tatiane revealed text messages she had sent months before her death, expressing fear of her husband and accusing him of mistreatment. She had expressed her desire for a divorce, but the defense lawyer for Luis argued that the couple had a happy relationship. Luis was charged with murder, including the qualifiers under Brazilian law of femicide, cruelty, clumsy motive, and hindering the victim's defense, providing further insight into the tragic events that unfolded. In May 2021, after a 7-day trial, Luis Felipe Manvaila was sentenced to 31 years, 9 months, and 18 days in prison for homicide and obstruction of justice. Number 9. The Deadly Dispute. On the afternoon of June 4, 2023, a man surrendered himself to the police after fatally shooting his ex-girlfriend and injuring 2 others at an apartment complex in Glendale. The victim was identified to be 20-year-old Jordan Marinda Castillo, and the incident occurred around 2:30 p.m. when Glendale police responded to a call at an apartment complex near 51st and Northern Avenues. Once they got there, they discovered 3 people who had been shot, and all 3 were immediately transported to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. Castillo succumbed to her injuries and was pronounced dead on June 5th. The investigation is ongoing, but up until now, 22-year-old Ruben Xavier Rocha has been arrested. Rocha had been in a relationship with Castillo in the past, and they share a 2-year-old daughter. But the couple had recently separated, and in April, Castillo was granted an order of protection against Rocha. According to the police, there had been a dispute between Castillo and Rocha on social media earlier on June 4th. Rocha came to Castillo's 3rd-floor apartment later that afternoon, dressed all in black. He jumped onto the apartment balcony and forcefully kicked through the glass door leading into the apartment where Castillo, her 2-year-old daughter, and 4 friends were present. While Castillo was on the phone with emergency services, Rocha opened fire from the balcony, injuring Castillo, a 19-year-old woman, and a 20-year-old woman. The 19-year-old victim remains in critical condition, while the 20-year-old victim is in a stable condition. One of the women in the apartment managed to protect Castillo's daughter by hiding her in the bathroom, and fortunately, neither of them were harmed. A man who was also present in the apartment escaped without injuries. Rocha fled the scene before the police arrived, but surrendered himself around 1:30 p.m. the next day. He is expected to face charges including murder, aggravated assault, and burglary upon being booked. Number 8. The Rage of a Rejected Man. On November 9, 2021, a possessive and jealous boyfriend brutally murdered his estranged partner, dismembered her body, and discarded the remains at a country park. 42-year-old Kamil Ranoshek worked at a chicken factory and savagely attacked 27-year-old Ilona Golubek multiple times with a hammer, driven by rage upon discovering that she had been in contact with other men on the dating app Tinder. While their 3-year-old daughter was asleep, Kamil mercilessly struck Ilona at least 7 times on the head with a hammer, inflicting multiple skull fractures and brain injuries on her. He then undressed her and placed her clothes in jars, which he concealed in a cupboard. Using his butchery skills, he dismembered her body into at least 15 pieces, using a knife or a similar tool. In the early hours of November 11th, he cycled to Whittam Way Country Park in Boston, where he disposed of Ilona's body parts in at least 2 locations. Ilona's body was wrapped in bin liners and placed in carrier bags. Afterward, he visited a police station to report her as missing, prompting detectives to launch a murder investigation. During the initial investigation of a missing persons case, the police searched the couple's home in November. In a cupboard, they discovered jars containing fabric that appeared to be stained with blood. Although Ilona's full remains had not yet been found, the discovery prompted a murder inquiry. Kamil was arrested on November 20th at 3:11 p.m. on suspicion of murder and was subsequently charged. The remains of Ilona were found in February 2022, 3 months after she vanished from her home. Some of her body parts were hidden beneath the flat they shared, including in the bathroom their daughter would have used. Ilona was murdered at their residence 26A Wormgate shortly after returning from a friend's birthday celebration at around 11 p.m. Kamil tried to cover up his actions by calling Ilona's mobile phone and contacting her friends to show that he was attempting to reach her. He also deceived relatives and friends to protect himself. Ilona had expressed her desire to end the relationship and had given Kamil 2 weeks to vacate the premises. The court learned that she had been in contact with other men on Tinder and had planned to meet someone for a drink. In October 2022, Kamil Ranoshek was sentenced to life in prison without the option of parole. Number 7. A Fit of Rage. On May 14, 2021, in the early hours of the day, a woman launched a knife at her boyfriend of 3 years during a heated argument. A 31-year-old mother of 2, Hayley Keating, is standing trial for the alleged murder of her partner, Matthew Wormleighton. The incident occurred at the couple's residence in Yeovil, Somerset. Keating, fueled by a combination of alcohol and drugs, launched a large kitchen knife at Wormleighton during a fit of rage. The knife lodged itself 4 inches into his chest. Immediately after the stabbing, Keating contacted emergency services to report the attack, but they doubted the accuracy of her account. Keating's version of events had changed, now stating that she had merely thrown the knife in Wormleighton's direction. Keating claims to have no recollection of how he sustained the injury or the events that followed. The jury was tasked with considering the circumstances that led to the knife penetrating Wormleighton's chest. The prosecution argued that the depth of the wound suggests Keating may have held the knife in her hand as she stabbed him, The motive behind the alleged murder was said to be Keating's anger and distress over Wormleighton's intention to leave her, fueled by the influence of intoxicating substances. But the defense presented a different perspective, suggesting that the victim had a history of violence towards Keating and had scared her on the night in question. They proposed that Keating, potentially affected by a mental illness impairing her self-control, acted in self-defense. But the prosecution highlighted that Wormleighton's previous partners did not report any violent or controlling behavior, instead describing him as caring, generous, and even charming. Both Keating and Wormleighton struggled with depression and indulged in alcohol and cocaine. As the trial unfolds, Keating denies the charge of murder. Right now, she awaits her sentence. Do you think Keating meant to kill her partner? Let us know in the comments and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 6. A mysteriously well-planned crime. On November 4th, 2022, in the southeastern Brazilian state of Sao Paulo, a former MMA fighter murdered his wife, who was also his teacher. 44-year-old Luis Lima was arrested on a Wednesday for the killing of 26-year-old Elida Ferreira, who was the mother of their 6-month-old son. The final moments of Ferreira's life were captured by a security camera in the building's elevator. On November 4th at 9:30 p.m., she entered the elevator, heading back to their apartment. Neighbors later informed the police that they had heard gunshots within the building, but none of them reported it. Footage from a building security camera revealed Lima's presence in the lobby at 9:43 p.m. He was seen with an empty laundry cart. Just 4 minutes later, the camera captured him pushing the cart, now hiding his wife's lifeless body completely covered in sheets. Lima then went to place the body in his car and drove off early Sunday morning at around 4:40 a.m. Eventually, he abandoned Ferreira's body near a stream in Parque do Cormo. 4 hours later, Lima returned to their apartment, this time accompanied by their infant son. The police discovered Ferreira's body 4 days later, wrapped in plastic. In an attempt to cover up the murder, Lima had reported his wife missing on the evening of November 4th. He claimed that Ferreira had left their home to visit family in Campinas, a city located in the northwestern part of the state, and that he hadn't heard from her since she had sent a message at 7:51 p.m. stating that her phone's battery was low. He further mentioned that messages and calls went unanswered, with calls being directly forwarded to voicemail. Lima asserted that he had contacted Ferreira's sister-in-law and mother, who confirmed that she had not arrived at their homes in Campinas. Lima also informed the police that he had personally searched bus stations, hospitals, and police stations in a desperate attempt to locate his missing wife. Authorities suspect that jealousy may have been the motive behind Lima's brutal act. As of now, Luis Lima is sitting behind bars and waiting for his sentence. Number 5. The brutal stabbing. On December 6, 2021, a woman's ex-boyfriend brutally stabbed her 11 times in a fit of jealousy. At the beginning of their relationship, 23-year-old Cynthia and 24-year-old Jack Sutton seemed to be deeply in love, but her friends expressed concerns about Sutton's behavior, sensing that something was off. He had possessive tendencies, forbidding Cynthia from spending time with her friends and family and accusing her of infidelity. Sutton even went as far as pressuring Cynthia to sever ties with her best friend because of baseless suspicions. He would invade her privacy by inspecting her undergarments after she went out. Blinded by love, Cynthia failed to recognize the red flags, but with time, she came to understand the extent of her mistreatment, especially after nearly taking her life. Cynthia, originally from the Czech Republic, met Sutton while he was working there in April 2020. They made plans to relocate to Germany for Sutton's job after spending 2 months in England. But due to complications related to Brexit and visa issues, they decided to stay in Scarborough. She left everything for him, but 4 months later, found out that he was cheating on her. Despite the betrayal and the challenges of being alone during the pandemic, Cynthia found it hard to leave Sutton, as he constantly threatened self-harm and placed the blame on her. During the summer of 2021, Cynthia began to realize that their relationship lacked genuine love, but they remained together despite their growing doubts until their relationship reached a breaking point, leading to a breakup just 1 week before the attack. Cynthia sought refuge at the home of her best friend Amy. Following the breakup, Cynthia and Sutton met for dinner to discuss their situation. Without her knowledge, Sutton took her ID during dinner, knowing that she would need it. Later that evening, while having drinks with Amy, Cynthia discovered her ID was missing and reached out to Sutton to get it back. Sutton agreed to meet halfway and return the ID, under the pretense of wanting to talk things through. But this was a trap. Before carrying out the brutal assault on December 10th, Sutton searched online, inquiring about the potential penalties for killing someone. As Cynthia walked with Sutton down a dimly lit street, he launched a vicious attack, repeatedly stabbing her. Amy and a neighbor witnessed the horrific scene and desperately called out for Sutton to stop while contacting the police. As Cynthia recalled the incident, she mentioned that Sutton kicked her head around like a ball, and it took 8 minutes for the police to reach her. While lying on the ground, Cynthia had to endure Sutton's threats to end her life. In an attempt to de-escalate the situation, she urged him to calm down and assured him that they would work things out, but he continued to assault her. Upon arriving at the hospital, a CT scan revealed that Cynthia's lungs had partially collapsed and her liver had been punctured, but despite the severity of her injuries, she eventually recovered and was discharged. In March 2020, Sutton pleaded guilty to attempted murder and possession of an offensive weapon. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison, with an additional 4-year extended license period. Number 4. Heated arguments. In November 2018, the lifeless body of a woman was found inside a house in Steel Creek. 35-year-old Stephanie Potts was the victim of a crime committed by her boyfriend, Deshaun Clipper, who pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. Clipper stands accused of not only killing her, but also hiding her body in a closet. The authorities suspect that the two had been engaged in a series of heated arguments leading up to the unfortunate incident. Clipper was arrested in connection with Potts' killing in November. Initially charged with first-degree murder, he was later charged with second-degree murder following his guilty plea. The Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office revealed that Clipper had been arrested in September on charges of assaulting a female. The incident came to light when officers responded to a distress call related to Potts' well-being. Once getting there, the officers made the distressing discovery of her lifeless body within the residence. While the police described her as a victim of violence, they did not disclose specific details regarding the cause of her death. Clipper was sentenced to life in prison. Number 3. Football match gone wrong. On April 10, 2022, a woman fatally stabbed her boyfriend in the heart while they were watching a football match at a local pub. A dramatic trial unfolded at Liverpool Crown Court as 31-year-old Emma Walsh stands accused of fatally stabbing her boyfriend, Gary Morgan, in the heart. An ambulance was called when Morgan was found with stab wounds. Walsh was distraught and crying as she was taken outside the room, where paramedics were attending to Morgan. Despite her plea to accompany Morgan in the ambulance, Walsh was informed that she was being arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Sobbing and claiming her innocence, she pleaded to see her father and expressed her confusion. During the trial, Walsh asserted that she acted in self-defense. She revealed her fear to the police officer, mentioning her bipolar disorder and requesting her father's presence. But her phone was confiscated during the search, having thrown it to the ground. Following her arrest, Walsh was taken to Wavertree Road Police Station, where she was arrested on suspicion of murder after Morgan's tragic death in the hospital. Walsh, who denies the charge of murder, maintains that she acted in self-defense. The trial continues as the court examines further evidence and testimonies in the complex case. What do you think will happen in this case? Let us know in the comments below and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 2. The crime footage. On November 18, 2019, a woman captured footage showing her boyfriend loading a handgun before shooting her and driving around with her lifeless body. 19-year-old Kevin A. Dixon shot 20-year-old Elisa Mackey in Warren in front of Dixon's residence. The victim lost her life in the van where she was shot after an argument on Shirley Avenue. Following the incident, Dixon chose to flee the scene with Mackey's lifeless body in the van. But his erratic driving caught the attention of law enforcement officers, who pulled him over on Gratian Avenue near 9 Mile Road. That's when the police officers discovered the body in the vehicle, leading to Dixon's apprehension. During the arrest, Dixon gave conflicting accounts about the circumstances surrounding Mackey's shooting. In one version of the events, Dixon claimed that Mackey had shot herself at his residence, but he also stated that he accidentally caused the gun to discharge by touching the trigger. It was later revealed that the accused gunman's mother, Nikita Dixon, played a role in hiding the weapon used in the shooting. Because of that, she faced charges of being an accessory to a crime after the fact and tampering with evidence. Mackey had celebrated her birthday the day before her untimely death. During Dixon's prosecution, Circuit Judge Diane Druzinski ordered him to face the first-degree murder charge, along with the charge of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. His charge carries a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Number 1. Toxic relationship. In March 2013, a 20-year-old woman was relentlessly pursued and fatally shot by her ex-boyfriend in Toledo, Ohio. Caitlin Gerber was driving to work, with 29-year-old Joshua Perez closely tailing her in his car. As the terrifying encounter escalated, Gerber's car ultimately crashed into a parking lot. On the same day, Gerber noticed Perez's car near her home. Sensing imminent danger, she promptly left for work, with Perez relentlessly tailing her. In a desperate bid to protect her loved ones, Gerber made a frantic 911 call, reporting that her ex-boyfriend was pursuing her with a gun. Witnesses also contacted emergency services, informing them of a man firing shots at a woman in a car. Authorities still aren't sure if Gerber sustained gunshot wounds before the crash or during the confrontation with Perez. But it is known that Perez went up to the stopped car and fired several rounds at Gerber. With her life hanging in the balance, Gerber fought valiantly against the threat posed by her ex-boyfriend. According to Gerber's family, her untimely death was the culmination of months of torment, stalking, threats, and harassment by Perez. The pair had initially met while working at a restaurant before Gerber's plans to pursue higher education. As their relationship deteriorated, Gerber resorted to changing her appearance, even changing her hair color, in an attempt to avoid recognition by Perez. When he persistently inundated her workplace with numerous letters, she sought help from law enforcement. After the shooting, Perez fled to his house in Maumee, where he barricaded himself inside. The police traced Perez's vehicle, prompting the deployment of a SWAT team. Determined to neutralize the threat, tear gas was employed to subdue Perez. A tense standoff ensued as the SWAT team assembled outside the property, working to resolve the situation peacefully. Crisis negotiators engaged Perez in telephone conversations for several hours, during which he expressed intentions to surrender. But the crisis took a tragic turn when shortly before 5 p.m., the SWAT team decided to forcefully enter Perez's home. Inside, they discovered that he had ended it himself. Joshua Perez was pronounced dead on the spot, ending all investigations. Which of these crimes make you never want to date someone again? Let us know in the comments below, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Bad Badger.